guys, it's Hannah, and today I'm coming to you with my January reading wrap-up. So in the month of January, I read a total of 18 books. And I don't think that has ever happened to me before. I know that there were a few months back, like when I first started BookTube and just like back from a very long time ago, where I would read like 14, 15 books a month, which was like a normal for me. And then last year I went through like this terrible reading slump where I couldn't even read more than like one book a month sometimes. And sometimes I didn't even read a single book for an entire month. And I just was not in the mood to read. But the start of this year has just been incredible for me in terms of reading. And like I said, I read 18 books, and I don't really know how that happened, but it did, and I'm really, really pleased with myself. Granted, they're not all like full 500, 400 page novels. I read quite a few graphic novels, I read some poetry collections, I read some novellas, so like some of them were shorter, but I still completed 18 books, which is still a lot. And I honestly don't know how it happened because my semester also just started, so I've been busy with like getting back into school and everything, yet somehow I still managed to read them. I'm not going to question it though, because I just want to keep going like this throughout the rest of the year, so hopefully I'm able to do that. So most of you will know that I don't actually do monthly reading wrap-ups anymore because they personally don't work as well for me because I read such a different amount every month. But because I read so many books this month, I did want to do just like a January reading wrap-up. And so since I have 18 books to get through, it's going to be a lot to talk about, and I'm not going to spend too much time talking about each book that I read. So without any further ado, let's just get into talking about all of the books I read in January. The first book I read in January was Layer of Dreams by Libba Bray. This is the second book in the Diviners series, and then after that I also read Before the Devil Breaks You by Libba Bray, the third book in the Diviners series. These are the only ones that are out apart from the first one as well, and apparently this is going to be like a 6-book series, and I don't want to have to wait that long for the rest of these books to come out because the cliffhanger at the end of this one was too much for my heart to handle. But I absolutely love this series. I read the Diviners for the first time last October, and I loved it so much, and then I decided that I needed to keep reading the series, so I picked up Layer of Dreams at the beginning of this month and I sped through it because it's incredible. And then Before the Devil Breaks You quite literally broke me because it's just so many things happen in this book, and I can't tell you guys what happens because, like, spoilers, but oh my god, my heart can't handle it. I ended up giving both of these books 5 out of 5 stars. I absolutely loved them, and I know a lot of people have been asking me to do book reviews for these, and I definitely do plan to. I just have to take the time to go through and make sure that I have everything that I want to cover with these. So it may take me a bit of time to get to the reviews for these books, but it's something that I'm definitely planning on doing. They take place in the 1920s in New York, and it's kind of like a paranormal mystery. We're basically like following around these characters who are trying to solve these murders, and there are ghosts involved, and it's just incredible. The diversity in these books is amazing. There's so much representation, so many different types of characters from all different backgrounds, and it's honestly just incredible. I highly, highly recommend this series if you're looking for a new YA urban fantasy, kind of paranormal, also historical series to read. They are so, so good, and I feel like they do not get as much love as they deserve. The next book I read this month was a graphic novel that I ended up just picking up on a whim, and that is Piper by Jay Asher and Jessica Freiburg. This graphic novel basically tells the story of the Pied Piper, and I actually didn't really know anything about the Pied Piper before going into this, and it's like kind of a retelling, not exactly a retelling, but like a reimagining, their own variation of the Pied Piper story and what could have happened. And it was a very interesting read for me because, like I said, I didn't really know anything about the initial story to begin with, and I really enjoyed the artwork. It was very, very pretty, and I liked the story, like some of the elements of it, but overall the story didn't have much depth to it. It had its own like clear plot, but it was kind of confusing at times because it felt like there were pages missing sometimes while I was reading this, and I would go back and I'm like, did I skip a page? Did I like miss something? But I didn't, and it was just kind of like disjointed, and some things just didn't connect from time to time, and so that kind of made the experience less enjoyable for me. And then the story overall just kind of left me wanting more. Like I felt like it was a bit too short, and so because of that I ended up giving this one I think a 3 out of 5 stars. It wasn't my favorite, but I did really enjoy the artwork, and the story was very new to me, so it was exciting getting to read something that I had never read before, but overall it was just kind of a bit disappointing. The next graphic novel that I read was The Gigantic Beard That Was Evil by Stephen Collins, and I loved this one. Basically, it's about this man who lives in this place called Here, and everyone in Here lives in here, and that's all they've ever known. They've only ever known here. And then they're all pretty much afraid of there, which is like the other place. So you can see like the juxtaposition of here and there, and like the commentary that it's kind of making is basically about otherness and people being different and how we're afraid of difference and others. And basically what happens is that this man grows this giant beard that like doesn't stop growing. And I don't really want to say anything else about it. I feel like you really just have to read it and experience the story because it's very surprising and it's not really going to be what you expect it to be. Or at least it wasn't that way for me, which is why I think I really loved this one so much. But I just really loved the message of this story as well. Like I said, it's about otherness and how we fear others. And it's just so, so good and so beautifully done. The artwork is very, very simplistic, but I really liked that it was just like black and white and just like sketches. And it's just beautiful, an overall beautiful story. And I'm so happy that I picked it up. And I gave this one a 5 out of 5 stars. Next, I read 2 poetry collections. I read Bright Minds and Empty Souls by Janae Cecilia and Stuff I've Been Feeling Lately by Alicia Cook. These are ones that I've had for a while now and I've been seeing them around a lot and I've been wanting to read them, so I finally decided to pick them up this month. And unfortunately, both of them were kind of letdowns for me. Bright Minds and Empty Souls was, I think, just overall too short. Granted, I have the like self-published versions of both of these. I'm not sure if this one has been like picked up by a publisher or not, but I'm pretty sure that this one has, and it's been expanded and there's like a lot more to it now. But this one was just like too short and the poems were just kind of too plain and simplistic for me. It wasn't like Milk and Honey in the sense that it was simplistic, but it had a very big impact when you read it. It just kind of fell flat for me and I didn't really connect with it too much. And then Stuff I've Been Feeling Lately, I did enjoy a bit more because this one actually has a really cool format. So because it's like a tape, you can see it's like separated into side A and B, and side A is basically just like regular poetry, but then at the bottom of each poem there's a song that she was like currently listening to while writing this, or that like kind of fits the mood of the poem. So it kind of gives you a playlist. And then the side B has like blackout poetry as well as the songs as well. So it was a really cool format and very unique in that sense. So I did enjoy this one a bit more than I enjoyed this one. And I think I gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars, maybe 2.5-ish. And then I gave this one a 3.5 out of 5 stars. The next book I read this month has to be one of my favorite ones that I read, and that is A Torch Against the Night by Sabaa Tahir. This is the second book in the Ember and the Ashes series, which I read last year for the first time, and I had not read this book after I read that one because I just kept putting it off because I knew that it was going to destroy me and that I was going to love it. But I finally picked it up and I'm so happy that I did because it was incredible. I've heard a lot of people say that they actually don't really like the second book as much as the first one and that it was kind of a letdown for them. But personally for me, I feel like I liked it the same amount, if not more. So much happens in this book. There's so much great character development and the world is expanded immensely and I just adored it. I'm definitely planning on doing book reviews for this one as well as An Ember in the Ashes because I love this series so much. It has become one of my all-time favorite series at this point, so I'll definitely be doing those reviews, but I'm so happy that I finally decided to pick this one up because it's genuinely just such a good book and such an incredible series. The next book that I read in January was The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. I read this during the 24-hour readathon that I did by myself a few weeks ago, and I vlogged it, so if you want to go and watch that vlog, I'll leave it linked on the screen as well as down below. Actually, these next few books that I read during that readathon. But The Cruel Prince is a book that has been getting so much hype recently. Like, everybody is talking about it, everybody is reading it, and everyone is rating it 5 out of 5 stars. And so I read this book because so many people were talking about it and I wanted to know why everyone liked it so much, and because I'd been wanting to read it for a long time because I really do enjoy like fairies and stuff, and I'd been wanting to read more Holly Black. So I was super hyped for this when it came out. And then I read it, and to me, it was just okay. I feel like this book has just become so overhyped that the hype definitely got to me, and I just don't think that it's worth the hype. I didn't think it was a bad book. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I thought it was good. I thought it was enjoyable to some degree, but it just wasn't amazing to me. Like, I genuinely don't see myself continuing on with this series. My main critiques were that even though it's a book about like the fairy politics of this world, and I usually like political books, like political fantasies and fantasy worlds, that's like one of my favorite things things to read in a fantasy. The politics of this world just felt kind of boring to me. Like, nothing was actually really happening and nothing was surprising, even though there was a ton of like plot twists in here. I kind of saw everything coming. It was pretty predictable. And then I also did not like the main character, Jude. I thought she was extremely irritating. I know she's supposed to be an unlikable main protagonist. That's kind of her purpose, but it was too much for me to the point where it just wasn't enjoyable. I didn't like the romances in here. I felt like they had no chemistry at all. I really liked Jude's older sister. She was interesting and I wanted to know more about her, but I did not care about Jude and I just didn't get her motivations. I think that's my main critique. If you don't know what the book is about, it's basically about this girl named Jude and her twin sister and her older sister, who are all kidnapped from the time that they're a child and brought from the human world into the fairy world and then forced to live there among the fairies. And her older sister is part fairy, but her and her twin sister are not. They're both human. And Jude kind of just becomes obsessed with the fairies and she wants to be a part of their culture and be a part of them, but she's human, so she can't fully ever be part of them. So because she was like kidnapped and brought into this world and wanted to be a part of them, I didn't really understand why she would want to do that. Not saying that I have to agree with every single main character's actions, but in this case I just felt such a disconnect from her that I just couldn't really go along with what she was doing. But yeah, for that and a number of other reasons, I just did not enjoy this book that much, and I'm just really disappointed because I really wanted to like it. The next book that I read in January was Snow Falling by Jane Gloriana Villanueva. I've talked about this on my channel a few times now, but this is the book that Jane from Jane the Virgin, the TV show, which is one of my favorite shows, publishes, and then they actually publish it as like a real book. And so I had to read it because I absolutely love that show, and I did, and sadly it was not very good. The book is essentially exactly like the plot of what happens in the TV show, and it just takes place in the 1900s instead, but the writing doesn't really make it feel like it was set in the 1900s. Honestly, it's just like basically they changed a couple names and then they put a date at the beginning of each chapter, and like there aren't cell phones and cars. So yeah, it's not really great, but it was a really enjoyable reading experience for me because I love this show so much, and this was basically just fan service. It's just another way of consuming a story that I already love, so I'm totally down for that. But objectively, I have to say it's not very good. Its main fault, honestly, is just the writing. It's just really not well written. The story itself, obviously, is great because it's the same story, but the writing is just what brought it down for me. I gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars originally. It's probably more like a 2.5 stars, and then that 1 star is just for like my enjoyment of the actual story itself. But yeah, I'm glad that I did read this. I'm glad that it was published. I think it's fun, but if you're looking for like an exceptional new romance, this is definitely not it. The next book that I read in January is actually another graphic novel, and that is Persepolis by Marjane Satrapi. This is a graphic memoir about the life of this woman who is living in Iran during the Iranian Revolution, and it's so incredible. Again, I read this one during that 24-hour readathon, so you guys got to kind of see like my reactions while I was reading it, because I was crying a lot while I was reading this one because it's just so incredible and it's such a moving story, and I knew that I would love it, but I did not think that it would affect me in the way that it did, and I just have fallen in love with this completely. The story itself is beautifully written, it's funny, it's heartbreaking, and the illustrations are just so well done. Again, it's very simplistic and black and white, but I really like that style personally. It's also the first graphic novel. There's a second part. I haven't read the second part yet, but just be aware of that because this leaves off on a cliffhanger, so you're just like not left off thinking that's how the story ends. There is a second part to it, but yeah, I highly recommend it if you're looking for a new graphic novel to read, specifically one that is nonfiction. This one is absolutely wonderful. The next book that I read in January is one that has definitely become one of my all-time favorites, and that is The Weight of Feathers by Anna-Marie McLemore. This book is a magical realism novel that follows the story of these two traveling performing groups, and these two groups have always been rivals with one another. Historically, one family has wronged the other, and they each have their own versions of their history and what happened, but it follows the perspective of these two characters, a girl from one of the families and a boy from one of the other families, and the two end up meeting, and it's a love story, and it's really good, and I don't want to say anything else because anything else would spoil stuff, and I just want everyone to read it because this book is incredible. Truly, this is one of the only books I've ever read that has been compared to The Night Circus, where I will actually say it does remind me of The Night Circus. So if you're looking for another book that is kind of similar to The Night Circus and gives you that kind of vibe and has a similar kind of plot structure, I would definitely say give this one a try. It feels like a YA version of The Night Circus, and it's so good, and it is so worth worth it. If you couldn't tell, I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars. I absolutely adored it, and I cannot wait to read the rest of Anna Marie McLemore's books because I know I'm gonna fall in love with those too. The next book that I read in January is actually more of like a novella, and it's one that I was not expecting to read, but I kind of wanted to branch out and, you know, try something new, because why not? And that is How to Catch a Wild Viscount by Tessa Dare. This is a romance novel, like straight up romance novel, and I had just been wanting to read a romance novel because I felt like reading some romance, and a lot of people suggested Tessa Dare for me, and this novella was free on Kindle, so I decided to just like download it and try it out and see how it was, and it was an interesting experience. As someone who does not read like any straight up romance, it was very interesting finally getting to read it for the first time, but sadly this one was not very great in my opinion. That's partially due to the fact that it was like 85 pages or so. It's not very long. It's a novella. It's very, very short, so not much can happen in that time, and not much really did. I felt like I didn't connect with any of the characters because I didn't have any time to, so the romance didn't really build up for me, and I didn't really feel anything while reading this one. But the writing itself was actually pretty good, and I feel like I would give Tessa Dare a second chance and read one of her full novels next time, and I might enjoy one of those. So we'll see in the future if I decide to pick up another one. But it was interesting getting to read a bit out of my comfort zone and try something new, so I'm excited to branch out from here. And I didn't actually give this one a star rating because I didn't really know how to rate it because it was so short. I felt like nothing would have been really fair, but I think I'd probably put it around like 2.5 stars. The next graphic novel that I read in January was Saga Volume 8 by Brian Kavon and Fiona Staples. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about this because, as you all know, I love the Saga comics. They are my favorite comics of all time. They're incredible. They're just so well done, so well written, make me so emotional. I cry in every single one. Can't really explain what it's about because it's the 8th one in an entire series, but basically it's a sci-fi world where there are two planets who are at war with one another, and we have two characters from each of these different planets who fall in love, and then they have a child, and that creates a lot of problems. If you have not picked up these comics yet, I highly, highly recommend that you do. They will not disappoint you if you like sci-fi, fantasy, or just comics in general. They're incredible, so I highly recommend trying these out, and of course I gave this one a 5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read in January was This Song Will Save Your Life by Leila Sales. This book is about a girl who is in high school, and she's been struggling a lot with kind of fitting in and finding friends. And then one day she ends up kind of finding this underground DJ scene, and she starts to DJ, and she realizes how much she loves it. But the story is basically about this girl kind of like finding her place and finding her way of fitting in. And it was really, really enjoyable. I will definitely put like trigger warnings and content warnings on this for suicide. There's a very, very vivid and descriptive scene of attempted suicide, so just be aware of that. And it's very early on in the book too, so that completely took me by surprise. But overall, it was a really enjoyable story. I felt like I could really connect with the characters. I read this so quickly. I read it in one day in 2 sittings and like in between my classes because I was just so into it, and I really, really did enjoy it. So I definitely recommend this one if you're looking for a new contemporary to read. It's an older title, a backlisted one, but it's one that I think is absolutely worth picking up. And I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. The next graphic novel that I read in January is Miss Marvel by G. Willow Wilson. This is my very first Marvel comic that I have ever read, and I really, really enjoyed it. It was kind of on the shorter side, and I'm not sure if like volume 2 is out yet, but I would definitely be interested in continuing on it because, like I said, it was kind of short, so the story seemed to cut off a bit. It's about this young girl who is from a Muslim family, and it's about her becoming a superhero and becoming Miss Marvel. And I don't really want to say anything else because, like, if you've read any of the Marvel comics or seen any of the movies, you kind of know like the routine of how they work, but it was really enjoyable. I really liked the main character a lot. She had so much personality to her, and she really drove the story forward. So like I said, I'd definitely be interested in continuing on with these, and I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read in January is actually a reread for me, and that is Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Now, I reread this book because, if you didn't know, I am currently enrolled in a Harry Potter class at my school. Yes, my school has a class that you can take on Harry Potter. It's like a student-taught class, but it's an actual class that counts for like actual college credits, and it's amazing and my favorite thing in the entire world, and we're basically rereading the entire Harry Potter series throughout the whole semester. So I'm going to be reading one of these series every week basically until the semester ends, and I'm so excited for it. So we finished the first book now, and I've decided that I'm going to be doing book reviews for each of the books, so those will be coming soon as well, and I'm so thrilled about it. It's going to be so much fun to go through and like annotate my book and be able to like do an in-depth review so I can have it so I can always go back and watch it whenever I want to, and I just can't wait because I love this series so much and it just makes me so happy, and I always feel like I'm coming home every single time I read it. And of course, I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. Are we surprised? The next book that I read in January is The Queen of the Tearling by Erika Johansen, and actually, I DNF'd this book for the first time. I DNF'd a book. I have never DNF'd a book before in my life, but with this one, I did, and I am so disappointed. If you've been watching my channel for some time, I feel like I've mentioned that I wanted to read this book for so long because I've been highly anticipating it because so many people just say that it's so good and such a good fantasy, and I don't feel that way. I really thought that it was pretty bad. I got about like 80% of the way through this book. Like I only had a couple of chapters left, but I just couldn't do it because I felt like I was wasting my time, and I never feel that way about books, but with this one I absolutely did. I'm not going to spend too much time discussing why I didn't like this book here because I have another video planned where I'm going to be talking about it in way more depth, so I don't want to spend too much time talking about it now, but basically, I did not like the main character. There was like no world building at all, and world building is so important for a fantasy, and the writing was just too dense. It's far too long, and the plot is just way too slow moving, and I really like slow-paced books, but this one just lacked like any sort of forward development. Like there was no action whatsoever, and I just didn't enjoy it, and I'm so sad. So yeah, I did end up giving this one a rating because I read so much of it already. I think I gave this one 2 out of 5 stars. It's probably like 1.5 to 2 for me. But yeah, just so disappointing. And lastly, the very last book I read in January was Truth Witch by Susan Dennard. So I decided to pick this book up because I recently met Susan Dennard at the Zenith book signing that I got to moderate, which I have also vlogged, so if you want to go and watch that, I'll leave it linked on the screen. But I got to meet her there because she was also there to sign some of her books, and she was there for the panel, so I got to interview her a bit and talk to her, and she was talking about this book, and I just have like so much respect for her because she's such an intelligent person, and the way she speaks and talks about her books just made them sound so interesting. She also mentioned that the world of these books and the elemental magic in these books were inspired by her love of Avatar: The Last Airbender, which like my favorite thing in the entire world is Avatar: The Last Airbender, and if you tell me that something is similar to Avatar, I have to read it. And I was not disappointed because this one actually did give me Avatar vibes, and nothing ever gives me Avatar vibes, but this one did, and I'm so happy that I read it because I loved it. It basically takes place in this world where there are witches who have like different elemental magic, so not the kind of witch that we tend to think about, but it follows our main character named Safi, who's a truth witch, and truth witches basically don't exist anymore, and she's kind of the only one. So her powers are extremely rare, and so because of that, her life is in danger. But there are so many other great characters in here as well. The magic is wonderful, the world is wonderful, and I'm so excited to read the second book. I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. It was such a fun read for me, and I'm so happy that I decided to pick it up because I know that I'm going to love the rest of the series too. Alright guys, so that is it for my January wrap up. I hope you all enjoyed watching this video. Let me know in the comments down below if you've read any of the books that I mentioned in this video, or let me know what your favorite book was that you read in January. If you'd like to follow me on any of my social media, all of my links are in the description box as always. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!